Welcome to the Work Trends Podcast, brought to you by Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan M. Bureau. Every week, I interview smart people reimagining the world of work. Be sure to stay current with all of our interesting podcasts by visiting our page at Talent Culture Work Trends on Apple Podcast or Spotify. And of course, you can listen at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends Podcast, sponsored by WorkHuman. I'm your host, Megan M. Bureau. Today, we are exploring how to elevate human resource leaders as strategic partners in the C-suite. We are going to discuss how to bring incredible value to executive level conversations and how to educate your team to rise to the challenge. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to have a fabulous conversation. Super excited you're here. But before we begin, please ask yourself these two questions. Number one, does HR have a seat in the C-suite in your organization? And number two, for HR to have a voice among senior leadership, what do they need to consistently bring to the table? Joining us today is Kiana Schmiedel from WorkHuman. Kiana Schmiedel is WorkHuman's Chief Human Experiences Officer, responsible for guiding all of the organization's human experience strategy, including talent, total rewards, learning and development, culture and employee experience, organizational design, yes, there's more, corporate social responsibility, and DEI initiatives. Kiana has been recognized by the Diversity Journal, Forbes 40 Under 40, as well as Business Insider for her work as an inspirational organizational leader and creator of open, equitable, and inclusive workplace culture. Wow, Kiana, we are so glad to have such a rock star with us today. I know there's tons to cover, and you and I could talk for hours and hours and hours, so let's just jump right in, shall we?
Oh, that sounds great.
Listen, as we enter a new calendar year, what do HR professionals around the world care about the most, and why are they still fighting for seats in the C-suite?
Okay, I don't know the answer to the second question, to be honest, mostly because I'm like, how could it be that we are officially in 2025 and people still don't see HR as strategic? I do think that there are some organizations that maybe have been plagued of how HR was thought about in the past as mostly a compliance function, maybe something that got in the way of them potentially moving fast. But HR hasn't been that in such a long time. HR has really been about the people, and your business is your people. You do not have success as a business without your people. So I don't know about that fighting to get in the C-suite. I think those C-suiters who have been there, who have understood the purpose of what HR is and can continue to be for them, have started to get it, right? You start to see more folks in HR reporting directly into the CEO. You start to see them at those budget and planning conversations because you have to take into account how should we be treating our people, and also what are we looking to get out of our people. It's more of a back and forth now than it ever was. And so we have the opportunity to, yes, do the strategic things like planning for how many technically butts and seats we need, but also what's the experience that you want employees to have. And when you really start to prioritize that, and you get really smart about where there's an opportunity to build versus buy and how you invest in your people, you start to see a lot more positive outcomes that actually impact your bottom line.
Yeah, I have to tell you, this very ongoing conversation about HR in the C-suite is one that, if you've tuned into me long enough out there in the community, you know I've paid a lot of attention to over the years. And I think there's been tremendous progress, I'm happy to say. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What are some examples of HR adding value to the C-suite? I mean, at this point, you're absolutely right. Like, hello, we were here a while ago. Guess what, everyone? We have case studies.
Right. And who doesn't love case studies?
Everybody.
So that's right. Everybody get strapped in, hold on to your seat. But so, okay, let's talk about some of the value that HR brings. And I've got to tell you, if you hear me hesitate when I say HR, I'm still like, oh, the idea of us being human resources, Personally, I love the idea of us prioritizing the human experience. That's why that's in my title and that's in my team's title. So you may hear me use HX as another term. Why don't we get to innovate like all of the other roles? Am I right?
Wait, hold on. Breaking news. We have a fancy pants here with us today. That's all I will say. Let's leave it there, right? You and I will just go, okay, zip it. Next, right? We have examples.
That's right. So let's get into these examples. So let's talk about guiding business strategy with data-driven insights that are specifically related to your people, right? When we talk about the cost to organizations of disengagement, recently did a study with Gallup that came out in September 2024 that showed that only 33% of US employees and 23% of employees globally identify themselves as engaged employees. And so what that means is there's a whole chunk of your employee base that feels like I'm not really engaged here. I may be looking around. And that directly relates to, am I actually putting in that effort that you're really hoping to get out of me in order to see those impacts to your customers, to the bottom line? Probably not. And so using technologies to be able to say, look, this is what engagement looks like for our people. Here's what we can do to tactically address some of this. Let's also hear back from them and create those listening mechanisms that allow employee voice to help inform what are we doing in order to give back to our employees. Things like your recognition program, of course, which we love here at WorkHuman, but also the opportunity to look across teams and say, these are the people who are critical, really glue to holding the team together, to being those connectors within and outside of the department, and making sure that you have plans around the folks that have the biggest impact to getting the work done, yes, but also keeping the people together and keeping them engaged is critical. And then there's also things like driving that ROI through the employee experience programs. We're done with the days of, oh, HR does the nice to have stuff, right? And we want to make sure that there's some amount of return on investment. So if we're talking about that low engagement, HR leaders can be part of the solution by developing those programs, like I said, strategic recognition programs to drive those improved business outcomes. And that directly ties into that hottest of topics through the end of last year, and I'm sure continuing to this year, around leading and upskilling, reskilling efforts. So the skills gap is not a new problem. We've been talking about this. You've talked about this yourself. And so it's this idea of what is the new challenge around the skills that people need? And AI is that big topic, right? It's about being smart. How can we use AI to say there are always those tasks that people don't want to do in these high turnover roles that it's hard to really keep people engaged in? Can we have AI doing more of that transactional work so that we can have our people actually doing that higher level thoughtful work? That's what keeps people engaged in the first place. And so marrying all of these ideas, the technology, right? The strategic recognition programs, the looking across your teams at who are those key drivers and influencers in the group, and then looking at who needs upskilling or reskilling and applying those tactically is really where you can see HR leaders and HR teams adding value to the C-suite.
How do HR leaders equip themselves to rise to the occasion and get their teams to a place where all of this is actually possible, right? That's where we're at.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I think coming off of the heels of like really the main parts of the pandemic, as an HR leader myself, you can start to feel like you're coming up to the cusp of burnout. In some cases, still trying to make the argument for why you should be seen as a strategic leader. You're trying to make sure that you're doing all the right things for your organization. We've thrown AI on top of everything else. And so really, it's about taking that moment to say, within 2025, this is going to be a defining year. So take the strategy, yes, but also look at the opportunity to fill your time with the things that really matter to the people within the organization that will drive the organization forward. So let's have our people, our HR people, reinvest in themselves. Get creative again, right? We don't have to just go through the motions of, yes, we do performance reviews here, and yes, this is a merit increase over here, but rather saying, how can we really think creatively about how we support the business by supporting the people? And identifying a place that can be almost like a retreat, right? For people to get to and to get together with other people who are thinking like you are thinking. I will tell you, it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with Work Human is because we have Work Human Live. Right. And so that's our own conference, but it really is that place where you get around other like minded people who aren't necessarily asking, how do I get through this next policy draft? But instead saying, well, should we be focused on that being the policy, or should we think differently about how we approach this overall? And that's really the opportunity that I think we have in 2025 and every year going forward, but specifically at a conference like Work Human Live.
And I am here to say that Work Human Live is completely legit. I have followed the conference for years, and that's one of the reasons why myself and the talent culture community are so excited to be, partnering to get everybody excited about empowering our teams to experience, to see, to learn from other people in order to take them to the next level. And I think conferences are that valuable time together right now, right? I mean, we're still wanting that time to be human to human. And I think, having this live event, right, is so unique. I mean, tell us what makes it so and what can attendees expect from the content at the event this year?
Listen, I know maybe it can seem a little bit contrived because I work at Work Human, but I'm being perfectly honest with you. My first Work Human Live was in 2018. So I'm sitting there in the audience. I just had my second child, and it was the first time I was leaving all the kids with the husband at home because I had to get to this conference. And yes, I saw speakers like Cy Wakeman, who I love, everybody loves, right? But I also saw Viola Davis, and she was talking about being a Black woman in an industry where she didn't always feel comfortable. And as a newish, again, mom, as a Black woman who was trying to figure out, like, what am I doing with my career and my working space? It felt like, oh my goodness, this is such a relevant conversation, and especially to HR professionals in this moment. And it's not just a celebrity talking to you, but it's talking about relevant things. And I think it's kind of the balance of let's hear from somebody that you know and respect, but who may sit outside of your industry, but have insights that you can apply to your work and your day. But then it's also looking at the content tracks themselves. And not to mention, I'm sorry, but the second reason why I was like, I have to work here is our CEO, Eric Mosley. When he gets on that stage, it was this sense of, oh my gosh, here's a CEO who gets it, right? Like he is the reason why this thing is called the Woodstock of HR, right? It's the place where you want to be. You don't want to miss out on it. It refills your cup in this amazing way. And it's all of the energy that's kind of rooted in this idea of gratitude that kind of comes through every aspect of the conference. And to me, like being able to live and breathe that on a daily basis and understanding that that is not the experience that everybody has in the working world, I want to make sure that people don't miss it.
Yeah, no, zero question. What I like the most about it is that the offerings are diverse and relevant. And at Talent Culture, we're always listening and vetting topics, as you well know, that are important to our community. And I can say that your team really put some thoughtful work into the content offering. So I appreciate that. So tell us who is going to be speaking at Work Human Live that you are most excited about seeing, hearing, or meeting in person.
Oh my goodness, I can't even contain my excitement right now. And if you could see the visual of me, I'm just like holding on to my face. I'm going to have jowls by the time we get to Work Human Live. But in addition to our CEO and founder, Eric Mosley, is going to talk to you about his thoughts on the future of work and the people experience. We have Adam Grant, who's coming back to the conference again. And I don't know if you all have had the opportunity to read his latest book, but I highly recommend it. It is such a great read. And then I am going to geek out a ton, not just because of Adam Grant, but also because we have recently announced that Trevor Noah is going to be speaking at the conference. So I'm just, again, I'm holding my face. My voice is starting to
Right?
sound funny because I'm pulling
Uh-oh.
my face. But listen, in addition to those names that hopefully everyone knows and recognizes, again, we have Cy Wakeman. We have Erin Meyer, who's coming back, right? The famous Erin Meyer of the culture map. And I swear, every single time I see her speak, I take something else away about the global working experience. And it's an opportunity to connect in a different way. And then the last one that I'll mention that I'm equally excited about is Hamza Khan, because the way that he talks about skills and the working experience and how to think of people is such a new approach to thinking about old topics. And I really love that opportunity to just get a different perspective, to hear a slightly different angle to the conversations that it probably feels like for so many of us we've been having for so long, and feeling like we're starting to see those breakthroughs because you hear other people talking about it as well.
Well, and it's real, right? It's not just like, "Oh, you're famous and I'm going to meet somebody famous." This is very pertinent, real topics. That's what I like. It's an impressive lineup, of course, but it's a no-brainer because everybody's there together, right? Being even more human. That's what I love the most.
Right. And I mean, listen, like we were talking about earlier in terms of the content, like take that concept of it being real and look at the content tracks, right? We have Rise Up, which focuses on development for anybody who's in attendance, and especially combating that idea of burnout and building the skills based organization. Build Up, which focuses on developing programs and learning about the tools and strategies that other organizations are using to ignite productivity through engagement and well being. Lift Up, which focuses on fostering and connecting a diverse and at times dispersed workplace community, right? Hybrid work, anyone? And addressing the challenges and disconnects that come with the state of working today. And then lastly, Step Up, which is designed for executives to help meet developing demands of the CHXO role as an expert on technology, strategy, and humanity. And the last piece that I'll add, if I haven't said enough, is talk about real. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be one of the co hosts this year. And so you can see me pulling on my face on the stage, and you can ask me questions as we're walking around or if I'm up on the stage, because the idea is I want to show that we practice what we preach. And sometimes we learn a lesson along the way that says maybe we should be preaching a little bit different. But being transparent, authentic, and having a bit of humility is how I like to show up at these conferences, and it's the way that you build those true, authentic connections.
Okay, so now we have to know, for anyone who wants more information about the event, what do we need to know? When, where? Tell us all the deets.
Okay, so let's start with the when and where, which is the week of May 12th through the 15th at the Gaylord Rockies in Colorado. I will tell you that registration is open now. There are discounts for groups, so you can learn and grow and get energized as a community and team. And any questions that you have should be answered by going to workhumanlive.com to hear from past attendees and learn more about the event itself.
Well, wonderful. I encourage everybody out there to sign up. Yours truly also plans on being there. So, guess what? You and I get to have some fun together.
So exciting. I can't wait to see you in person there. You
Right?
can tell me if I've really like pulled the jowls a lot. Maybe I should start pushing my
Yeah.
face up.
I mean, you and I should really talk about that because I have a tool for you to use, and it's gonna it's gonna be great. But listen, the speaker lineup, the content tracks, it's all super exciting, and not to mention the networking, right? And getting to know other people. So I just want to say thank you, Kiana, for stopping by today. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. And thanks to everyone who listens to the podcast. Any questions, please feel free to reach out.
What a wonderful conversation today. It's been a joy discussing how we can collectively elevate HR teams to the C-suite and the upcoming WorkHuman Live event. Here are a few of my key takeaways. Number one, savvy HR leaders are aware that there is still some pressure to prove that they belong in the C-suite conversation and decision making. That said, it's important to be forward-thinking and financially savvy. Number two, leaders and teams who consume ongoing educational opportunities rise above the rest. The energy, the peer-to-peer sharing, and the ability to futurecast doesn't happen behind our desks. Number three, Work Human Life sounds like it's going to be incredibly impressive. If you can attend, you really should. Kiana, thank you so much for being here today. We genuinely appreciate your time and insights. And last but not least, the talent culture community. I so appreciate you, and I'm glad you're here listening. Be sure to use the hashtag WorkTrends and share your thoughts on the following questions. I'm super curious. Question number one, are you taking your team to any conferences or summits this year? Do share. Question number two, what do you think is going to be the hottest HR topic in 2025? And number three, what conversations in the C-suite should absolutely include HR leaders? I want to hear from each of you. Visit us on Twitter X, LinkedIn, and Instagram to share your responses to these questions, or feel free to contact me personally at Megan M. Bureau on the socials or mbureau@talentculture.com. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Work Trends podcast, the place to find meaningful connections at work. If you love what we do here, make sure to share our podcast with your friends and colleagues, send me a question on the socials, and make sure to use the hashtag WorkTrends. I'll see you all soon. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Just a reminder that you can hear all the Work Trends podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and on the podcast page at talentculture.com. Be sure to subscribe so you can listen on the go and stay up to date on all the latest news you want to hear. I look forward to catching up with you next time. I hope today's information made you wiser, happier, more informed, and most importantly, thinking of how you can use it to improve the quality of your life.